What would you do if at the moment of death, a voice from the darkness offered you the chance to live again? Have your answer?
He's a dark and brooding comic book hero who loves hanging out on top of tall buildings at night. You know the superhero I'm talking about, right? Close, but no. Think Batman, but even angrier.
You're about 2 seconds from wearing that smile around your ass.
Yep, Spawn, but not the one from the 1997 movie starring the world's worst dad.
What an adorable little girl. Oh, look at her. Can I keep her?
Hey.
That's it? Not even a stern shove or a back the up? That clown is joking about stealing your kid. Anyway, we're talking about Spawn, the animated series. Or, as I like to call it, yo, people are the worst. The animated series.
I hate that!
But that's exactly what made Spawn so extraordinary. It got real about how truly up humans can actually be. But it really stood out because it took everything that made Batman the animated series so great and gave it a twisted adult spin. Like giving its version of Batman a machine gun and some pretty eccentric metaphors.
Whatever wild hair you had up your ass about that place is officially plucked.
Oh, and some really, really interesting intros. What would you do if you were 13 years old and had the chance to watch HBO unsupervised? Got your answer? This is everything you didn't know about Todd McFarlane's Spawn. Spawn premiered in 1997 on HBO and was heavily inspired by Batman the Animated Series. So much so that its official title was Todd McFarlane's Spawn, but most people just called it Spawn the Animated Series. They even hired crew members from Batman, and it totally shows.
It is the way of things for each new warrior. There is no respite from the inner pain.
But that's exactly what HBO wanted. BTAS, which is what us Batman nerds call it. Well, I do, and that's what counts. BTAS was such a huge hit from 1992 to 1995 that HBO wanted its own animated show to appeal to Batman's legions of adult fans, which is why Spawn has so many shots of bats. The main difference between the two shows was that Spawn was much more brutal. It even started with a warning before every episode to make sure no kids were watching. It's just not recommended for mature audiences, but mature audiences only, something creator Todd McFarlane told us he was super proud of.
The one thing that was sort of fun and kind of cool and a bit of a badge of honor, it was the first show that they ever had that had all the possible warnings that you could put on a TV show.
Of course, that never stopped me as a kid. I had the hot box, aka free cable growing up, so I was already watching things I wasn't supposed to. I will say that warning was absolutely right though. Just look at what Spawn does to this dude. Even the sex scenes were angry. Yeah, that was definitely a turn the volume down moment for a lot of us at home. Spawn was able to distinguish itself from Batman in a lot of different ways, but mostly with nudity. At least that's what 13-year-old me remembers. Oh, and a ton of religious imagery. The crucifix should be the top billed star. It's like we're being stabbed with it. Yep, just like that. But beneath Spawn's brutal exterior, it had a ton in common with BTAS. For example, Spawn takes place in a subsection of New York called Rat City, which is just a seedier version of Gotham with really weird street performers. Even Spawn's characters read like the cast of Batman with an R-rated twist. Both Batman and Spawn live in the shadows, speak in deep baritone.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I've come to take you to hell.
And interrogate thugs by dangling them off rooftops.
Who took her?
Okay! It's effective. Spawn even wears a mask to hide his face like Batman. Not necessarily to hide his secret identity, but because he's uglier than the trolls from Ernest Scared Stupid. See? Also, Spawn has his own handy gadgets to help him fight enemies, except instead of a utility belt, he has a magic cape. So I guess he also has a little bit of Doctor Strange in him. He also has magic chains. I'm thinking it's a metaphor for the chains that bind him and because he might be into S&M. And while Batman's driven by vengeance for the murder of his parents, Spawn's driven by the vengeance for the murder of himself. is it just me, or should we have gotten a Spawn the Crow crossover movie, or at least a comic, since they're basically on the same mission? You help me, I help you with yours type of thing? Coming back to avenge his own murder basically made Spawn a zombie, which explains his unlovable face. Spawn became a zombie thanks to a deal he made with the devil called Malboja.
What do you think, Spawn?
Spawn?
Yeah, as in hell spawn.
See, before becoming Spawn, he was a government assassin named Al Simmons who was killed by his partner. And since he killed innocent people in the line of duty, Al went to hell, which actually seems kind of lit.
You'll pay for every crime, knee deep in electric slime. You'll suffer till the end of time.
Wrong clip. Hell totally sucks. Obviously, Al wanted to get the out and be with his beloved wife Wanda, so Malboja gives him life as a zombie with superpowers in exchange for his help on Earth doing really violent If that's not bad enough, he's also haunted by Malboja's demon army, a bunch of killers and torturers and just real vulgar motherfuckers.
Consider this a friendly reminder. Get with the program.
While Batman was voiced by the unrivaled Kevin Conroy, Spawn was voiced by the equally incredible Keith David, who you may remember from 1994's Gargoyles, where he also played a broody hero who loved to perch on top of buildings.
You are trespassing.
He also starred in cult classic sci-fi hits like The Thing, They Live, and Armageddon.
The fate of the planet is in the hands of a bunch of retards I wouldn't trust with a potato gun.
And yes, I'm including it here. Admit it, you love it just as much as you love Keith David's complex emotional range.
I don't give a damn! I've already lost everything. There's nothing more to lose.
Spawn even has its own white dude who gives him moral advice. Just like Batman has Commissioner Gordon, Spawn has Cogliostro, or just Cog, thank God, who's homeless. And just like Gordon, Cog wears a trench coat and is an exposition machine.
Listen, we all want to go home, my friend, but it's war getting there.
Then there's Spawn's version of the Joker, who's called Clown. Clown works for the devil and torments Spawn on Earth.
Malboja owns you. You are his bitch.
The voice acting for Clown is incredible. Shout out to actor Michael Nicolosi. The unsettling giggles and the way he would deliver the most violent, sadistic lines were really cool, but also had me a little shook.
He made a deal. The boss won't be happy when he hears about this.
He was also just as good as John Leguizamo in the live-action movie, like where he makes fun of this little kid.
You were at my birthday party.
No, duh. What are you, a regular Einstein?
Like the Joker, Clown is a real jerk to people, but also to cats. Relax, I'm sure it landed on his feet. Clown is actually the human form of a demon known as Violator. Violator is one of Malboja's foot soldiers who somehow is uglier than Spawn.
This ain't over, Spawn.
You made a f***ing deal.
Then there's the villain Chapel. Al and Chapel were close friends until Chapel betrayed and killed him. Some might call him two-faced, thank you. Though I just call him Mr. Bad Manners. Then there were a bunch of villains who'd fit in perfectly in Batman's rogues gallery. Billy Kincaid, a deranged serial killer similar to Victor Zsasz, only Kincaid is a child killer who for some reason Spawn growls at like a dog. Or Overt Kill, a bounty killer a la Deathstroke.
You got no conscience, no soul when it comes to killing.
What I've got is a hungry bank account.
The cool thing about Overt Kill is that he was named by Marvel legend Stan Lee. In a direct-to-video comic book talk show called The Comic Book Greats, Stan Lee came up with the name and told McFarlane to use it as a character.
I've been wanting to do a movie with this title. I never thought of it as the name of a character, but it occurs to me it's the kind of name I think you guys could play with. And the name is Overkill.
Then there's Jade, an angel from heaven who kills hell spawns, but kind of has a soft spot for Spawn. It's a very cat and mouse relationship, except this one has a much darker arc than Catwoman's.
Please, set me free.
Then we have Jade's replacement, Lily, who feeds off of nature, similar like poison ivy, which is a bit of a stretch to just go with it. Lily feeds off of blood, most specifically green blood.
I'm just like you. They made me into a monster too.
Lily was voiced by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who put her manic performance as Lily to good use in The Hateful Eight.
Oh, you can kill us all, but you'll never spend a cent of that bounty money, and you'll never leave this mountain alive.
Yet, despite the many surface-level similarities we've mentioned, at their cores, Batman, the animated series, and Spawn were radically different. Spawn was like that uncle you had growing up that meant well but would give you shots of tequila and then tell you it was good for your guts, but you loved him for it. Spawn had cursing.
I warned you, you fat piece of
entire scenes in strip clubs, and for some reason a lot of smoking. But really, it was the gratuitous violence. It's like this show was written by Quentin Tarantino. And the themes were somehow even darker than the imagery. We're talking about a show that dealt with such complicated adult subject matter that, as we showed earlier, creator Todd McFarlane appeared before each episode to explain what the was going on.
As you race around trying to put food on the table or pass your exams or make love, are you confident that you could distinguish the forces of light from the forces of evil?
I mean, I don't know. I was just a 13-year-old kid who just wanted to see some cartoon nudity.
Do you believe in cause and effect? Drop a glass, the glass breaks. Strike a match and a fire starts.
He's like a goth Rod Serling. But those live-action intros do have a cinematic quality thanks to Doug Liman, who reportedly directed all the season 1 intros before going on to direct The Bourne Identity, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Edge of Tomorrow, and my personal favorite, Todd McFarlane drawing by himself like a moody teenager. Many of the episodes dealt with stuff most TV shows would never touch. Like when Spawn has to save a kid from a child killer in the episode Dominoes.
Would you like to dance? Just you and me. But first, ice cream.
The kid he was trying to save was named Cyan, who was named after Todd McFarlane's daughter in real life. But the darkest story involved a mobster named Tony Twist, a ruthless mafioso with unfortunate taste in undergarments.
This smells like the work of a goddamn government-trained assassin.
Tony Twist is actually a great mobster name, so good that McFarlane took it from a real NHL hockey player. Fun fact, McFarlane himself was a part owner of the NHL's Edmonton Oilers. Unfortunately, Twist sued McFarlane and they ended up settling out of court, which I guess was pretty sweet for Twist. I know how I'd react if someone paid me big money for my name. But that wasn't the final twist. Thank you. The name Al Simmons was based on one of McFarlane's friends who actually never received financial compensation for the use of his name. McFarlane settled out of court with his friend as well, which is why I think McFarlane must have wrote this monologue as penance.
I pledge everything I own, everything I have left, my heart included. I want my humanity back.
Even the episode titles were super dark. There's Death Blow, Evil Intent, and Send in the KK Clowns. You could kind of guess what that was about. Yeah, this was not an upbeat show, which is why HBO had to air that warning ahead of each episode, letting viewers know they were about to watch some And that's ironic because HBO was like the king of airing messed up Remember this? Like I said earlier, having free cable allowed me to watch things I probably should have never been watching. For Spawn, all of the darkness came from McFarlane, who wrote many of the episodes himself. McFarlane was a longtime Marvel artist and writer who became famous when he relaunched Spider-Man in the 90s and co-created Venom, who actually shares a striking resemblance to Spawn. After Marvel, McFarlane left and co-founded Image Comics, and Spawn became its first hit comic book series and toy line. That's right, McFarlane launched his own toy line after Mattel offered to produce one, but didn't quite live up to his standards. So he launched McFarlane Toys, which quickly became a leading toy manufacturer that produced action figures for sports stars, TV and film characters, and even the band Kiss, that were actually pretty lifelike.
Kiss action figures, each with authentic costumes, instruments, and lifelike hair.
No, not that lifelike, but McFarlane toys are incredibly realistic. Seriously, look at these bad boys. They're so detailed and true to the characters. I have like 30 of those in my house. In fact, they're so authentic, even the Spawn toy commercials were, you guessed it, dark and ominous.
All new, all action, all yours from the world of Spawn. Each sold separately. Welcome to my world.
HBO bought the rights to Spawn in a bidding war, which they won by promising McFarlane complete creative control. That lasted one season. At first, HBO was pleased with the early Batman vibes, which was helped when they hired BTAS co-creator Eric Radomski to design the show. Remember the shots of bats? They also hired composer Shirley Walker, who worked with Danny Elfman as orchestrator and conductor on Tim Burton's Batman score. She created a new theme for Spawn, and it has the same movie feel, but with more ghostly modes. However, HBO didn't like the grisly direction the story was heading in during its first season under the guidance of head writer Alan McElroy, who wrote horror movies like Halloween 4. You can see the heavy horror influence throughout season 1. HBO grew so frustrated with the creative direction that they demanded heavy rewrites after season 2 was already animated, forcing the directors to reuse old animation that didn't fit the new dialogue. That's why so many shots were covered in shadow and kind of hard to follow. The animation suffered early on, which is why production hired Madhouse Studios in season 2, who's most noted for acclaimed anime hits like Wicked City, Trigun, and Black Lagoon. As the animation became much more polished in later episodes, viewers were treated to beautiful sequences like this one. Sadly, after 3 seasons and 18 episodes, HBO pulled the plug, which is unfortunate because Spawn was everything us Batman fans could have hoped for and more. It was mature storytelling at its finest.
Cast out of society, taking refuge amidst the garbage, like Spawn himself, these unclaimed souls know they will never be accepted by the world beyond these alleys.
Thankfully for all of us Spawn fans, there are hundreds of comic books available, as well as a new, fingers crossed, upcoming live-action movie being helmed by McFarlane himself. It's also been announced that in 2020, Spawn will be available as a DLC character in Mortal Kombat 11. Until then, we'll always have the first live-action Spawn flick, which wins the award for the longest tongue bath in movie history. Do you have a favorite episode from the HBO series? Who do you think was the ugliest Spawn character? I gotta go with Clown, right? Though I'm torn between animated and live-action versions.
I don't mind being short, fat, and ugly, but the pay sucks.
Oh, also, what were you guys watching with free cable? Let us know in the comments.
When you play with matches, you can get burned.
Thanks for watching. For new episodes that drop every other week, make sure you subscribe right here. And for more EYDK, like older episodes, click here.